It all started on the 16th of January 1919, the date on which the 18th Amendment was ratified. This amendment prohibited the sale, transportation, and manufacture of all alcoholic beverages. This amendment was not very well liked by the American public, so much so that in 1933 the 21st Amendment was passed, allowing citizens to sell, transport, and manufacture alcohol once more. The time period between these two amendments is known as the Prohibition era. During this time period, everyone inside of the United States found themselves in need of alcohol with no legal way to acquire it. This set up a point in history where people started a more advanced form of organized crime. During this time, gangs started to arise inside of Chicago, such as the Chicago Outfit led by Al Capone and the Northside Gang led by George Bugs Moran. These two gangs often quarreled about whose gang had a larger presence inside of Chicago. This argument was quite prolonged and got to such a violent point where Al Capone ordered some of the members of the Chicago Outfit to murder members of the Northside Gang. One of the larger reasons for the 18th Amendment being ratified was that in 1874 a massive number of women unionized and started the Women's Christian Temperance Movement. The reasoning behind the movement was that women were tired of their husbands coming home drunk every single day, and they wanted this to change. The Women's Christian Temperance Movement went on riots at bars and drugstores. They would sing hymns and repeat Bible verses. This, along with a decrease in national health and laws against people selling alcohol near military camps, made lawmakers decide on outlawing alcohol to enforce a better America. This search and encounter often happened between a cop and someone who was illegally selling alcohol anywhere in Chicago, but was most commonly found inside of speakeasies, places where people illegally sold alcohol, most of the time including rotating walls and alcohol bottles without brands. The reason for the rotating walls is that if they ever saw a police officer, they would simply rotate the walls to make it seem as if they had no alcohol inside the store. If a police officer ever saw a speakeasy on the side with the alcohol, a lot of the times the seller of the alcohol would simply bribe the cop due to the amount of corruption in Chicago at the time. This and access to newer and stronger weapons that had been created in World War I provided an environment where organized crime would be able to get to higher levels and become more advanced than it had in previous times. As mentioned earlier in the documentary, the two main people were Alphonse Capone and George Bugs Moran. They both contained their business inside of Chicago, and at one point Bugs Moran set up a meeting planning to discuss a mole among them. Alphonse Capone wanted what almost anyone wants, power, so he decided that at this meeting he would kill Bugs Moran and take over what he thought he owned so Capone could have more power over Chicago. He thought doing this would reward him by both taking out a mole and getting rid of his competitors. Two of the men sent by Alphonse Capone were dressed up as police officers, whilst the other two were dressed up with suits, overcoats, and hats. 7 of the members of the rival gang had arrived by the time of the massacre. The massacre happened at SMC Cartage Warehouse, where the 7 members of the Northside Gang were lined up against the wall and soon after shot in a brutal way, now known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. All of them were left dead on the ground as their killers swiftly ran away. Luckily for Bugs Moran, he had a haircut scheduled at the time, causing him to be around 30 minutes late to the meeting. Once he arrived, he spotted police vehicles nearing the warehouse and immediately fled the scene. Shortly after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, there were newspapers printed around the world. Everyone now knew what had happened. This ruined the reputation of Chicago and finally exposed the politician and policemen who were taking bribes and making alcohol. Shortly after, people criticized the government, politician, and policemen of Chicago for not doing their responsibilities of stopping corruption and using their power for the good of our nation. This made people fully understand the problems of legalizing alcohol and soon after made people end the prohibition. For a brief period after, some gangsters would say, "Only Capone kills like that." This referenced George Moran, as he said the very same thing directly after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. These discussions over time led people to overturn the prohibition through the 21st Amendment, which gave people the right to drink, transport, and manufacture alcoholic beverages once more. This caused people to start questioning firearm rights of American citizens and whether taking away rights to weapons would stop massacres such as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre or not. Soon after, most people realized that it was the Federal Bureau of Investigation's responsibility to stop crimes such as the massacre and stop people from illegally selling alcohol instead of taking bribes. After the massacre, the FBI started investigating Alphonse Capone, which in turn caused him to later get arrested by an FBI agent named Elliot Ness. This was a large event in history that severely affected people's opinions on Chicago and the Prohibition. This made people question whose responsibility it was to stop this and to find and or punish who committed the crime. This also led to Americans gaining their right to alcohol back and more Americans questioning gun rights and the rights and responsibilities of their leaders to take bribes and stop violent crimes and corruption.